A very good evening to all of you. I hope everything is fine there in their own place. Today, we are going to discuss on one of the very important issues, which is one of the biggest challenges to sustainable development, that is climate change. And we know that the basic foundation, the important definition, what is climate change and others, we have already learned in the previous session by Dr. Diksha Dave. Today, what do we feel that as a student of sustainability science, we need to aware and we need to understand the technicality behind climate change from the perspective of a sustainability analyst, a sustainability expert, and manager to achieve sustainable development in application of sustainable development programs, projects. So that's why when we talk about climate change today, we are going to focus on mitigation and adaptation. So when we have a quick look into what is, quick look into some of the report. I'm not taking so much time in defining all these things. We know that what are the impact of climate change. If you look into some of the, one of the, it is not latest, one of the report which was published by World Meteorological Organization in 2017. Here you will see the impact, the magnitudes of climate change, which is in front of us. One of those is, the year 2017, we were evidence with one of the year which have most costly hurricane season on record. And if you look into some part of the globe, you will see the exceptionally heavy rains that triggers into deadly landslides. And I know if you look into one of the important ecosystem, as we call as coral reef ecosystem. And it is one of the second year of major bleaching in the Great Barrier Reef that was happened in 2017. And when climate change happened, because of climate change, we know that unpredictable, that extreme events are happening like flood, droughts. When it have that consequences, we know that when there is floods, when there is drought, then when there is extreme heat waves, we lost number of lives. And if you look on those figures, you will find out that those lives, they are from the group of that underprivileged group of society. And as we know that climate change, there are, whenever climate change is happening, and when climate change, it never leave any component of the ecosystem, any component of the nature society interaction. And one of those is, as you know, that when climate change happen, automatically it will have direct impact in the ecosystem structure, ecosystem function. I will not go in detail. One of the important area which we need to know is agriculture. When climate change is happening, then this has directly impact to the agricultural production in the process of agriculture. That again, because of that, we know that if we take that agriculture example, that when there is no production, there is no, that change the agricultural production pattern, you will see it has a direct impact into the society, that have direct impact to the equity, inequality, and so on in that way. And it has direct impact to the economic system. So this is some of the important issues we have to understand. And moreover, one important thing we are well aware, and most of us knows that the beginning of climate change is with the human civilization. And we created that situation, that accumulation of those impact that brings to today's situation of climate change. So the point is that when it was happened because of our activities, because of our anthropogenic activities, then at least we will be able to stop that at some certain point of time. But here we have to understand as a sustainable analyst or sustainable experts is that the phenomenon or the climate change events, that climate change, it cannot stop in one go, or it will take a lot of time on the one side. On the other hand, whether when we know that it will not be possible to stop in 5 years or 10 years, and we know what are the sources, what are the starting point of bringing this global phenomenon of climate change. So we have understand it, and we also understand it cannot stop in, we cannot stop in 5 or 10 years, and the impact what we are getting is because of the activities it was 20, 25 years back or 30 years back, or people from in the last centuries back. So it will take, the process of climate change, whatever in front of us, it will be here in this biosphere for another century. If we are able to stop it also, we are minimizing. So the point is that to stop this climate change, first is, since we know that climate change is happening because of our activities, so we know those activities, we must try in our best level to mitigate those activities, to minimize those activities. In the one side, we know that when it was happened, because of the cumulative impact of all our activities, it has become a global phenomenon. In the same way, when we try to stop it, then when we try to mitigate it, it will not be possible to mitigate or stop in 5 or 10 years or 20 or 30 years. So the another 1 century, whatever we are calculating, whatever we are extrapolating, whatever we are projecting, it will go on. So in this situation, as human civilization, we must try to cope up, means we have to adapt to the situation. So this is what we are going to talk today. So then the question comes, what is mitigation? When we talk about mitigation, as I told you that, we know that what are the factors that lead to climate change. And we know those factors. When we know those factors, then we will try to minimize, or we will try to avoid those factors. That's called, that is the way we have to mitigate that, right? So as per Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that the technical definition of mitigation is an anthropogenic intervention to reduce the sources or enhancing of greenhouse gases. We know that the greenhouse gases is the major factors, because we produce a lot of greenhouse gases in the process of our own benefit, in the process of creating your wealth, in the process of your economic growth. So that's why we have to reduce that sources. One point. Another is that we have to enhance the sinks of those greenhouse gases. That is the way, because we know that because of our anthropogenic activities, in the same way, we have to, the civilization has to intervene in these processes. Then again, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change define it as the adjustment in human nature system to actually or expected climatic stimuli, which can reduce the negative impacts and take advantages of the positive. Right. These are the technical definition of mitigation. Then, as I told you, that phenomenon of climate change, which is one of the biggest challenges to sustainable development, will happen, and that doesn't mean that we are not supposed to tolerate all these things, and we must try to tolerate these things. In the one side, we must try to mitigate. On the other side, we must try to cope up with the situation, and we must cope up with adaptation. As we know that adaptation is a general process or general phenomenon. Even before we realize the phenomenon of climate change also, for example, is layman also, whenever, if you are going to let us take an example in India, as a tourist, you are going to Leh Ladakh, then you are trying to adapt to the environment for a few days or 1 days or few hours. So in that same way, because of the sudden change in and that environment climatic condition, in the same way, the way it is happening across the globe, and in that way, we need to adapt in that way, in the same way, so that the impact of that climate change can be, we will be able to adjust on that, right? In the same way, we have to mitigate. So the mitigation and adaptation has to go together. And as we know that there are certain this international efforts which started from 1980s till today about the climate change, and we can I will send you those some of the important international politics on climate change in publication today. I will not discuss on that. In summarizing that, and from 1980s onward, when we realized the phenomenon of climate change, after scientific discussion, a number of convention was happened in the late 1980s. We we constitute that intergovernmental panel of climate change, climate UNFCCC, then followed by UNFCCC, and so on. Then we have Kyoto Protocol, Conference of Party, COP, and different meetings has happened. So I will not go in details on that. These are common effort. Then when you talk about mitigation means we know that the major sources of this climate change, that is the increasing the greenhouse gas, because of the increasing greenhouse gas. This greenhouse gas is this is one of the important gases before it is happened, because still it is important because of the greenhouse gases, the Earth is able to survive. But if we increase the temperature beyond that level, then it creates climate change. So we know that how the concentration of natural greenhouse gases is increases by our anthropogenic intervention. So one of the example is that increase in carbon dioxide emission. So we know that this is one of the region where there is change in climate change is happening. So we need to reduce those gases. Then at the same time, we know that there are certain things where those greenhouse gases that trap that thing. So the process of mitigation forces, we have to find out we must try to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, and in the same time we have to try to find out the sinks of those gases a natural way. On the other hand, we need to create or develop a number of technical innovative ideas, so innovative interventions to absorb those greenhouse gases, to control the concentration, right? So that's why United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Article 2 reads that the ultimate objective of this convention is the stabilization of greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Such a level should be achieved within a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystem to adapt naturally to climate change, to ensure that food production is not, and to enable economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner. So this article clearly reflects or clearly means that when you talk about the climate system, when we talk about the mitigation of those greenhouse gases, it will not be possible to meet the objective in a short period. But at the same time, we need to give a time frame so that we can minimize the impact. So the climate change have impact in each and every sector in nature society interaction process, right? Then when we talk about the mitigation, as I told you, first is stabilizing atmospheric gas, greenhouse gas concentration. We know that as far as humans in the planet, and for achieving our to keep our own livelihoods, and at the same time for our own survival, there will be some output, like like carbon dioxide will also be one of the output, but we need to stabilize that. We should not produce those gases beyond some limits, right? Then second is, when you talk about that climate change, whatever happening in this global climate change is because about an ineffective utilization of energy. So we need to use the efficiently the use of energy resources. For example, why carbon dioxide is increasing because of the use of that different fuel, right? Like petrol and others, petrochemical products and all these things. So because of the lack of efficient fuel mechanism, so we need to use that energy efficiency mechanism or energy efficiency technology. Then on the other hand, we know that the impact of the climate change, the production of, in the process of anthropogenic activities, we produce a number of greenhouse gases. Then the natural process of natural greenhouse gases, the natural production of greenhouse gases. So the alternative, what we see in front of us, that we know that if we try to use or we use alternative source of energy, as we call the renewable energy sources, the alternative to those energy that will minimize or that will be able to stabilize atmospheric greenhouse gases. Then because we need to, on the other side, in one side, we know that the stock of the oil is very limited. And in the other side, we must try in our best level, we must try to end the era of oil. Now, as we know that when you talk about the sink is to trap whatever greenhouse gas is emitted or whatever we are emitting, that needs to be trapped. So that means we need to getting back those greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide. So these are some of the mitigation processes we have to follow. For that, some of these stabilizing and also greenhouse gases concentration is very important. That's why whatever activities we're doing, we have to understand that we have to aware the consequences of that. So we need to stabilize. We must try to stabilize atmospheric greenhouse gas concentration. Then we need to change towards a non-carbon dioxide emitting utilization of non-carbon dioxide emitting fuel, like near zero emission technology. Complete transition of the world supply to renewable is important. On the other hand, we know that global policy discussion is going on, and they're keeping target for different country, for different nation to achieve for that minimizing or that carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. So these are some of the, we have seen approximately, if you look into the figure, it was before pre-industrial, it was about 280 parts per million of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. Now it had rose about 550 parts per million carbon dioxide. I will not go in details, right? Then the second point is energy efficiency. When you talk about energy efficiency, as I told you, most of the emission of carbon dioxide is because of the inefficient use of energy. So we need to reduce the production emission of greenhouse gases and many more the impact to the environment. We need to convert that high efficient technology, like when you use for electrical, also in light, you need to use such kind of electrical appliances, such kind of technology which has efficient efficient utilization of resources. In the same way, when we talk about the buildings, what we are having, we need to improve energy efficiency of the buildings in every aspect. And in case of our transport system, better fuel efficiency in cars, many more are there. It is a very brief details over here. Then when you talk about renewable energy sources in the end of soil, alternative to that conventional fuel is renewable energy. We know that. That's why we call it renewable energy is alternative energy. So we must try to utilize or to take the benefit at the maximum to the use of renewable energy. For example, let us begin with displacing oil. Before we are going to reach the peak oil phenomenon, and we have the evidence that when it was happening energy crisis 1970s, so we must try to displace those use of oil with that of renewable energy. In the same way, when we talk about getting carbon dioxide back, now we need to find out some technique that is similar to those using remove carbon dioxide at source. That is happening. For example, we have this kind of that technology like free air sequestration technology, and we're also talking about greening the earth, like planting more trees and all this. These are, some of the efficient technology to trap the carbon dioxide, bringing back that released carbon dioxide to the its own sink. So these are some of the that's some of the activities we need to follow. If you look into the historical framing of climate change adaptation in thinking process, you will find out, as I told you, when 1970s to 1980s, Club of Rome, from academic point, they look into they asked question, and they look into the perspective of ecological limits to human development and the growth where it is happening because of the human population. And because of that, we know that climate change is happening. How you have to respond it? Then, when it is happening, how we have to sustain the system? Then, if we have to sustain the system, whether that system will adapt automatically or not. So, in the time 70s to 80s, that the approach was that we were talking about was individual adaptation process. Then again in 1980s, then international, the 1980s beginning, then different scientists, academic, they started to talk about the scientific, evidence behind this climate change, and the people realized, the policymaker, planner realized, and the international efforts started to coming on together through different process of convention, workshops, seminars, and so on. So in the same way, then advisory group on greenhouse gases, means intergovernmental panel on climate change was constituted, and they looked towards the issues this climate change from the lens of what will be the impact, what are the impact of climate change, and how we have to adapt in terms of whether society as a human society, how we have to adapt. In the same time, how much, in what way ecosystem is, the natural ecosystem is adapting that way. In that time, that the IPCC's recommendation and way of approach was ecosystem adaptation was recommended. In early 1990s, that Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee was formed, and then started to talk about in 1980s when IPCC that talks about that adaptation. Then in 1990s we started to talk about mitigation, and let's say in that way United Nations Framework on Climate Change was formed in 1990s. In the late 1990s, then we have different conventional parties now still going on. We have 25 COP, and that talks about the policy. Then COF talks about the policy at different level, and from 2000 onwards, our objective, the international effort is towards different programs that focus on coughing up adaptation and mitigation of climate change. You will see in different report we are publishing, we are preparing, then that UNFCCC's assessment report and so on. So this is how global common effort. And if you look from the institutional setting for adaptation under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, now when you look into the different, different category of countries, depending on their economic growth, we know that the inequalities over there in terms of economic prosperity, in terms of development progress, in terms of, and many terms. So we know that three important division categories of countries across the world. One is developed and developing and underdeveloped countries. Three. So when we know that, we know all the politics, what was happening to climate change negotiation mechanism. And the important point is that what we aware is that we have to work together. We have to cooperate each other. Wherever possible, we have to help between different countries, among different countries. That's why the United Nations system, they constituted a financial mechanism. So under financial institution mechanism, they have different fund that like the adaptation fund, least developed countries fund, special climate change fund, and green climate funds. They created such kind of fund so that we'll help to each other, right? As we know, the adaptation is the adjustment to reduce the vulnerability of communities, regions, or activities to climate change variability. When we talk about adaptation, mitigation is, you know, it most of the time when we talk about mitigation, it is in global context and a larger context. But when you talk about adaptation, it can be looked as a sustainability expert, and our vision should be that, and it is a very, in general, also adaptation is at the level of local, right? So local environment or local condition. So as I told everybody knows that, and most of us we know that adaptation cannot be successful and will not be able to effectively implement effective until unless you do not, if you do not have go with along with mitigation. Because in the same time, if you are trying to adapt and if you are not mitigating the process, whatever the sources, if you are not trying to mitigate adaptation, it will not be very difficult to adapt to that situation. So we have, it has to go parallel. That's why anticipatory and the precautionary is more effective, because when we talk about adaptation, it is about when it is happening, how we have to cope with that. That's why when you talk about adaptation, we follow the precautionary principle. For example, let us take an example in agricultural sector in India. Okay, if it is happen a farmer and they look into, okay, if there is no rain, how to do it? So that they try to find out a way to adapt to that situation, right? So these are some of the process we have to look. Then, and if you look at here, one important point is that adaptation strategies require long-term horizon, which may not be popular with government system, which prefer to focus on shorter time frame quick fix. This gap we have to understand as a sustainability expert, because when we talk about adaptation, it is not about one season, it is not about 1 year. It has to be for long term. And if you look into most of the policy maker and planners, they as well look into short term. Right. So when you talk about climate change, and especially the impact of climate change and the strategy to cope up with that adaptation, we have to look in longer term, say in the social adaptation also, the environmental that ecosystem adaptation also. That cannot be achieved in 5 years or 10 years. That's why we follow the precautionary principle. It is in local level. And if you look into the difference between adaptation and mitigation, it is very important here. Please note down for examination also, it may be very important. As on the other hand, as in sustainability expert, we must aware about all these differences to convince those gap of understanding with the policymakers and planners. In case of mitigation, we try to reduce all impacts of climate change. And when we reduce the impact of climate change, automatically reduce the adaptation stage. Then in adaptation, selective and take advantage of positive impact, reduce the negative ones, right? Benefit can be observed at global level. That's I told mitigation, that you can look that benefit in and larger context. And when it comes in adaptation, it happens in local only. So benefit, of course, it will say in your local scale only. So the benefit of mitigation carried out today will be evident in several decades, right? In the same way, as we know, the impact of the climate change was happened due to activities, the human activities that was done few century back, 2 century back, 3 century back. In the same way, the mitigation mechanism, what we are going to do today, and then this, advantage, this impact will see evidence after 20 years or after 30 years, maybe after 1 century, after 100 years also. But in case of adaptation, we know that it can be observed immediately. As I gave the example of, for example, and we talk about the survive to look into the cropping pattern and all that, and that thing. You will see, okay, in this time when last year we had that kind of situation, if it is happening in this situation, which kind of cropping pattern we have to follow, right? So you will see in 1 year or 5 years, you will be, okay, this particular species or particular cropping pattern is successfully adapted. They will be able to tolerate in different environments, right? Like mixed cropping and all that thing, that this is an example. And when you talk about mitigation, as we know that the greenhouse gases emission, there's pollution, there has no boundary, especially if we talk about this that greenhouse, climate change. It is because of the emission of gases. So when we talk about emission gases, air pollution, especially air pollution, that has no boundary, right? So that needs a global common effort. And then we talk about this adaptation, we can look at the lower scale, means at local level. This is a difference between mitigation and adaptation. But in some way, what we can do is, which I told you, and most of us know that mitigation adaptation should go parallelly. Then they, you cannot, take it differently. That has to go together. And if you look into United Nations Framework Convention climate change efforts, you know that, and 1990s, when UNFCCC 1990s first was that 1990, they look into, when we talk about mitigation, that process, they look into 1990 baseline. Under the Paris Agreement in 2015, to present more global ambition, whereby all states make contribution to mitigation with adaptation, and as I do, finance also rising in prominence. Financial institutions should play an important here. The point where we're talking about finances, I told you, and most of us know that few of the underdeveloped country, even developing country, they do not have enough that economic strength to initiate, to mitigate, to introduce the mitigation and adaptation efforts. Right. If you look, for example, the Kyoto Protocol set a goal of reducing Annex 1 country. Annex 1 country is developed country, of greenhouse gas emission by 5.2% from 1990 levels by 2012. That was the first Kyoto Protocol. Then we have Paris Agreement that set a global ambition goal of holding the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial level. In that way, I will not go into delve in this international politics on climate change. In that way, Kyoto Protocol set up some target in the same way Paris Agreement, latest Paris Agreement in 2015, they give some target, and unfortunately we know that it is unable to get whatever the target we are getting because of that intercontinental or in that different group of countries politics. Some of the important component approaches which we can look is that clean development mechanism and a joint implementation approach, which is one of the flexible mechanism under Kyoto Protocol that includes emission trading and so on. So in lead up to Kyoto, 3 climate funds because as we know that some of the country where they will not be able to fund for their own development strategy to fight with climate change. So the climate funds were created under United Nations, that under Kyoto Protocol, the Special Climate Change Fund, the Least Development Climate Countries Fund, and the Adaptation Fund. So that will give and cooperate approach cooperation among different countries. If you look into Paris Agreement, it seeks to enhance adaptive capacity. See, if you, the reason why I'm bringing here in Paris Agreement is in Kyoto Protocol, what happened, our main objective was towards, in the beginning, it was towards mitigation. From Paris Agreement, we started to talk about adaptive capacity, resilience, strengthening resilience, and reduce vulnerability. This is some of the progresses in our process of common efforts to fight in climate change. And in our own country, let us have a quick look into our National Action Plan on Climate Change, what we're doing, what is our progress, right? As we know that first, if you look into one of the important sustainable development goal is, that is goal number 13 on climate action, with an objective to take an urgent action to tackle climate change and its impact, right? So what India is doing to achieve this particular goal, the approach is what we follow under the umbrella, United Nations umbrella on SDGs is we are trying to integrating climate actions in the existing nations' policies, strategies, and the planning. Then, as we know, we are trying to have a clean energy mechanism, right? Then we are trying to reduce emission intensity. On the other hand, we are trying to improve disaster risk reduction and preparedness. So, and if we look from integrating climate action policies and strategies in the planning as an approach, we know that in National Action Plan on Climate Change was started, first initiated in the year 2008. This National Action Plan on Climate Change is an outline, is a comprehensive strategy to deal with climate change related problems, issues, and in the same time, we are also building on solution based on the advanced technology. Because when you talk about a mitigation and adaptation, it needs advanced technology. And if you look into our efforts or efforts since then, every state, most of the states, they are working and they have their own state action plan of climate change. And most of the states are, if you look today's scenario, every state are have their policy, climate-related policy implement at their own state level, at different, even up to district level, to fight with climate change. And it was launched, this NFCCC was launched in 30 June 2008 to address the future policies and programs for the climate mitigation and adaptation. And probably we can say India is one of such countries to release such kind of policy and planning. And we have, most of you have aware that we have 8 important missions under India's National Action Plan on Climate Change. They are National Solar Mission. It is now when you talk about National Solar Mission, it talks about energy, National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency, National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, National Water Mission, National Mission for sustaining the Himalayan ecosystem, National Mission for Green India, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, National Mission for Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change. If you look into our mission, most of the missions, we talk about energy efficiency. In the one side, and other side, improving livelihood also, right? And at the same time, improving the environmental that health, ecosystem health. No. First, if we look into National Solar Mission, it was launched in the year 2010 on 11 January with a target of 20 gigawatt of grid-connected solar power by 2022, means next year, with an aims of to promote the development use of solar energy for power generation, with the ultimate objective of making solar competitive with fossil-based energy option. So we are trying to switch from the fossil-based energy option towards solar-based, means renewable energy. And we have, under that mission, the major plan is long-term policy, specific goals for increasing the use of solar thermal technology in urban areas, every aspect. And you know that India is aggressively doing research and R&D in this particular field of solar energy. And we have our domestic production of raw materials, components, and products, like we have the Bharat Electrical Limited and so on, right? The next mission is enhance energy efficiency. This is very important because whatever the emission is because of the inefficient use of energy, as we know that. So it was launched in 2010 to strengthen the market for energy efficiency by creating conducive regulatory and policy regime. Here, this national mission for enhanced energy efficiency specifically focus on market, right, and foster innovative and sustainable business model to the energy efficiency sector. Because when we have invented or we have discovered, we have created a technology that has to be marketed to the people, to the stakeholder. So this is one of the objective. So initiative under National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency is to perform, achieve, and track that market transformation for energy efficiency market. Then energy efficiency financing platform is important. Framework for energy efficient economic development, like partial risk guarantee fund for energy efficiency, venture capital for energy efficiency, national energy conservation. Because when you talk about implementing that particular mechanism of approaches, there is a need to, appreciate their efforts, recognize their effort. That's why we have National Energy Conservation Award, to encourage them to work towards achieving those goals. Implementation agencies, as we know, BEE, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. When you look into different electrical appliance, you will see star rating. It is because most of you know that, because in that star rating that is given by BEE. Most of the time it is given by BEE, certified by BEE. Then we have Energy Efficiency Service Limited also. These are implementing agency. The third mission is National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. When you talk about impact of climate change, as we know that climate change, it never, it touches each and every component. And human habitat is one of the important, which we need to, when we talk about impact, and if you want to see in an integrative, holistic way, we have to look at an habitat point of view. And this National Mission on Sustainable Habitat was launched in June 2020 with an objective to promote understanding of climate change, its adaptation and mitigation, energy efficiency, nature resource conservation. Now, under Sustainable Habitat Mission, we bring understanding and awareness about the processes about the impact of climate change and adaptation and mitigation, energy efficiency, nature resource conservation. The components of Sustainable Habitat missions are formulation of city development plans incorporating principle of sustainable habitat. That's why here we need to look at that component of energy efficiency. Development and adoption sustainable habitat standard into legal framework, because without intervention of legal framework, it's very difficult to implement those things. That's why. Then capacity building and outreach, it is very important, because if we do not have community participation, it will be very difficult. That's why capacity building and outreach is very important, and it's one of the important components of sustainable habitat mission. Of course, we know that without R&D, it will be very, R&D is very much to find out a better alternative way, efficient technology, and so on. So then we need to have supplementary measures. Then the objective of this is improve energy efficiency building through extension of energy conservation building. When you talk about habitat, then sustainable habitat, it's that we're using energy from early morning to every aspect of life. We forget about our food, everything and surrounding us energy. So we need to first is your building shelter. So we need to have energy efficiency building, better urban planning model, safe to public transport, this day-to-day activity, we need to change in our day-to-day activities, and that is the objective of the mission, right? Then next is the National Water Mission, is fourth mission under our NMEEE that was launched in April 2011. When you talk water, it is about conservation of water, minimizing the wastage of water, and equal distribution of water. So regular continuous research studies in all aspects related to water and climate change happening. At the same time, we have our traditional way of system of water conservation, which we need to be revived. We need to be relook into those traditional practices that is happening around us. Then at the same time, when we're talking about the effective implementation of those mechanisms, those approaches, we know that capacity buildings awareness program is important. That is also one of the important components. Then coming to the Himalayan ecosystem, that is fifth mission of that's NMSKCC. We know that Himalayas plays an important role in our countries, especially that in this that climatic condition of climate of in this subcontinent. On the other hand, if you look into our agricultural pattern, also with deeper fertility given to this northern plains because of the Himalayan ecosystem. And at the same time, it is a hotspot biodiversity. So we need to sustain the Himalayan ecosystem because of different aspects, because of its importance, unique importance. So we need to understand the complex processes affecting Himalayan ecosystem, and we need to evolve management policy measures for sustaining, safeguarding the Himalayan ecosystem. And we know that the role of that particular ecosystem, we need to have a proper and regular that mechanism to look into, to monitor the health of that ecosystem, right? So that is one of that is very much important. That's why we have plan institutional arrangement for technical work function to achieve this important mission. Like Himalayan glacier and the associated hydrogeological consequences needs to be studied, and for that National Institute of Hydrology, Roorkee, that's they taken care. Traditional knowledge society in their livelihood, that is taken care by Jawaharlal Nehru University. Sustaining agriculture by Indian Council of Agricultural Resources. Then wildlife conservation, protection, microflora and fauna, that is under the coordinators of Wildlife Institute of India. Then forest resource and biodiversity conservation and protection, Schipper Institute of Himalayan Environment Development. In the last few years, from the last 4 or 5 years back, now the nodal agency to implement that Himalayan, this National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem is this the Schipper Institute of Himalayan Environment and Sustainable Development. Environment and Sustainable Development, Climate Change, they are taken care. Then the sixth mission is National Mission for Green India. When you use the term, we know that Green India means greening the India, increasing the green cover. It was launched in 2011 with an objective protecting, restoring, and enhancing India's diminishing forest cover and responding to climate change by combination of adaptation and mitigation measures, enhance carbon sinks in sustainable managed forests. As we know that we need to trap those released greenhouse gases that is responsible for the particular climate change. That's why greening forests is one of the very important mission of India. When you have green India, as we know that the importance of forest in absorbing the carbon. That so this is one of the important mission. All our missions are very important. So under this mission, the objective is to increase that forest recover on 5 million hectare of forest lands and improve the quality of forest cover, another 5 million hectare, a total of 10 million hectares. See, it is talking about not only about your increasing the forest cover, it is also talking about quality of forest cover, right? So if we improve the quality of forest cover, then automatically and biodiversity, hydrogeological service, carbon sequestration. As you learned in that one of the courses about that ecosystem structure, ecosystem function. So when you improve the that forest cover in terms of quantity and quality is automatically taken care of most of the ecosystem services. In the same way, if you improve that, the livelihood will be improved and carbon sequestration and capacity will also improve, right? And 7th mission is National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. India being an agrarian economy-based country, we need to have that sustainable agriculture mission. So the mission was launched in the years 2010 in the month of September with major aims are transform agriculture into climate resilient production system. Here we're talking about adaptation mechanism, right? Grow and ecological sustainable agriculture production, ensure food security, equitable access to food resources, enhance livelihood for opportunities, contribute to economic stability at the national level. The thrust areas are, India have diversity in agro-ecosystem. That's why we have 12 or 13 agricultural zones. So if you look into those things, you'll find out that we have dryland agriculture, we have wet agriculture, and so on. So major thrust when we talk climate change is the first impact which we'll see is on dryland agriculture. So the taken care of dryland agriculture is very much important, and this one of the thrust area. Then access to information. It may be different kind. Information can be of weather condition, climatic condition, cropping pattern, and so on. Then biotechnology, wherever possible, we have to we have to follow the biotechnology approach, available biotechnology, and whatever the new intervention developed by scientists and technology that needs to be, implemented in field level. And again, that agriculture in India is just like, gambling. So for that, we need to have a risk management. And these are some of the component. Then the strategies are, when you talk about dryland agriculture, when you talk about, as I told you, to avoid those unpredictable situation, then we have to promote integrated farming system. These are very much important as in strategies. Then popularizing resource conservation technology, introduce practices that will support mitigation efforts in time of extreme climatic condition. Then effective management available. All components, wherever possible in agricultural component, we must try to bring together to cope up with or to adapt with climate change. And that's why in one side and others, if you look into our traditional knowledge system, how we used to survive all those extreme conditions, and we need to evolve involving that traditional knowledge system in presence of with the support of institution professionals. It's very much important, and this is one of the strategies to the mission. Then the last mission is National Mission on Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change. And objective is to build a national science technology capacity in climate change research to develop a strategic knowledge system. Because without knowledge, without sharing the knowledge, without developing the knowledge, without that evolving, then co-evolve of knowledge, it will be very difficult to cope up or to adapt in climate change. So with this objective, it seeks to build a vibrant dynamic knowledge system in climate change, create institutional capacity for research infrastructure. It seeks to build knowledge and research network, develop national capacity for modeling the regional impact on climate change. Because this is very important because we need to understand that we need to study the regional impact. When you talk about adaptation, it should be in a regional level or a local level. So with that objective, the major programs project launched under National Mission of Strategic Knowledge on Climate Change are 12 centers of excellence established, 20 major research and development program is there under Department of Science Technology, Minister of Environment, Forest, and so on. 25 state climate change centers, 7 national network program, 7 human capacity building program, 8 global technology watch group. Because here we have to understand, because we need to take and help cooperation from other countries also, and to increase or to give training to the young faculty or young scholars. We then introduce Indo-US Fulbright Column doctoral, Dr. Column doctoral and postdoctoral fellowship in climate change, Indo-German research column. These are some of the programs and policy to achieve that. Now, and we have developed national knowledge network program in climate change, like climate change and human health, climate modeling, climate change, human health, climate change and coastal vulnerability, urban climate, aerosol, and so on. Then come into the second component of clean energy. What is our progress? Our clean energy target of 175. Well, let us look into that second component of clean energy. What is our progress? We have talked about national action on plan on climate change, which is one of the strategy where we are trying to bring the issues of climate change with existing our nation policy program. The next is clean energy mechanism. We have a target of 175 gigawatt of renewable energy generation capacity by 2022. These are the target. So recent one is we have National Clean Energy Fund, and to finance and promote clean energy initiative along with the allocation of resource for clean energy. We have Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, LPG connection for rural areas. Because when we talk about that mitigation, when we have Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, when you have LPG connection, means we're talking about energy efficiency. We're talking about mitigation of greenhouse gases. Then it's when in terms of emission intensity, our approach is, through legally, we have national electricity policy in 2018 that we are trying to, we already achieved that electrification in most of the villages across India to install, and we are shifting towards non-fossil fuel source of electricity generation, and in that we are progressing very well. Then emission intensity, I will not go into detail. When we talk about the mitigation, we need to have a proper monitoring mechanism. That's why we have Central Pollution Control Board, under Central Pollution Control Board in association with State Pollution Control Board. We are regularly monitoring air quality across the country under the air quality monitoring program. Okay, it has 680 monitoring stations located in 300 cities, towns, covering 29 states and 6 union territories. Then one of the strategies we are following is improving disaster risk reduction and preparedness. The National Pollution Disaster Management, National Disaster Management Plan we have, that is under disaster resilience integrated Sendai framework for disaster. That is under that Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction, as well as the SDGs. Then we have National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project, then schemes of strengthening state and district disaster management authority. We have National Disaster Management Authority. Most of us, we know that. We have International Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure through a joint initiative involving 12 partner countries. Again, if you look into the specific that achievement, we can look into this figure that the share of renewable energy in terms of in this figure is that we have by October 2019, we have 35.22% of India's total electricity generation was from renewable energy. See, 35.22. It is, the country like India, it's a big achievement. We're sure in the year to come, we will be able to achieve 100%. Then electricity generated from renewable resources, then Himachal Pradesh, 94% of electricity they use, their source of electricity is from renewable sources, Sikkim 91%. Then carbon dioxide saving, when we talk about unit Jyoti by affordable light emitted diodes, LEDs for all Ujjwala scheme, when you use LEDs, that's right. When you use efficient electrical appliances, bulb efficient energy technology, you save a lot of carbon. Then you mitigate at individual level, you mitigate your responsibility, you are taking major responsibility in mitigating climate change. So in that way also we are progressing very well. So you just look into this figure in the third quarter of 2019, by switching to LED bulbs, we have 37 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent was achieved. So these are the state of which are performing very well by switching into LED. Then if we look into the figure of share of solar energy with that of total energy consumption, total energy utilization, India installed grid connected solar capacity 31.1 gigawatt in 2019, which is 24.3% of total renewable energy basket. Total, see, this is also, we are achieving, progressing very well. These are some of the progress in different state and union territory. The share of solar power to the total renewable energy basket, it is highest in Goa, followed by Telangana, Rajasthan. These are the percentages. And if we summarizing what we have talked today, we know that mitigation is widely discussed and successfully applied in various contexts at the international, national, regional, local, and even individual level. When you talk about mitigation, it is about technical infrastructural investment, renewable energy implementation, improving energy efficiency. So despite that thing, we cannot, as I told everybody knows that that adaptation and mitigation strategies should operate simultaneously. They have interlinked together each other. So mitigation adaptation strategies require action at different levels and involves different actors. So each of us needs to take responsibility in this thing. And if you look into this adaptation strategy, as we discussed today, we have adaptation strategies. One is National Action Plan on Climate Change, where we have different mission. Then, and every state have their, state action plan of climate change at their level, which is under the umbrella of National Action Plan. This is what we have to aware, or we have to understand the progress we have made so far in our country. So thank you very much. These are some of the references.